Well, I've just bought the next car, and it's a car with a potentially dead engine. Well, the next car's here, and like I mentioned in the other video, this is a car with a bit of a mechanical challenge this time. It sounds like it's spun a bearing, so we're going to have to open it up and have a look. It's a BMW X1, and I bought it. I got a bit giddy off auction, I'm not going to lie. It's what happens when you have a couple of beers and then go on an auction site. But we're here for the challenge. We're here to get it working again. So let's have a quick look round it and see what we can find. Now there is a dent there. Let's see what we can do about that. Headlight lens is cracked, and for some reason this bumper's popped out. But that's been sprayed, and sprayed very badly. It's not even actually the right colour. So a bit of paint work to do just there, but other than that the bodywork's very clean. Wheels don't look too bad, a little bit of curbing. But yeah, the tyres are bald. Same on the back. Brakes look really rusty, but again that might have just been because it's been stud. A little bit of scratching there. So for some reason the bonnet catch has been ripped off or taken off, one of the two. I've actually had some pliers on this, it's very stiff, so I've ordered a brand new full assembly for that cable, all the levers, everything. The door lock, it's in there but it's broken, maybe a clip's broken or something, or maybe it just needs clipping back in. So oil level okay, service requirements. No surprise there. Service history. BMW all the way up to 48, which matches the book. Engine oil 2 years ago, service overdue. Okay. 2021 vehicle inspection. That's just an MOT, I think. Brake fluid change was done 2022, so that needs doing. Front brake pads. Okay. Next vehicle check in 2026. Right, so it's a bit, well, it looks like it's a bit behind, but you don't know. If it hasn't been done by BMW, it might not have been programmed properly. I think the only way to check is to drop the oil and see what state that's in. So let's get to the part you're all here to see, and let's start it and see exactly what noise it's making. I think you'll agree, whether you're a mechanic or not, your engine should not be making that noise. So fingers crossed the previous owner, when they heard this, when the fault occurred, they turned the engine straight off and didn't do too much damage. Now the first thing I did was do a few simple checks, and this is where it gets a bit strange because the car's got a brand new air filter in it, so it's had some form of a service. It's also got plenty of oil in it. The oil's very black, that's for sure, but it's definitely got oil in it. So it'll be interesting to see what actually is the cause of this going wrong in the way it's done. Well, it's quite clearly had a brand new starter motor very, very recently. That's going to be the oil drain. Wow, the sump is part of the engine mount. Well, that could make life a little bit tricky. Yeah, it's going to be starter motor off and all sorts. So let's get into it. First of all, take the oil drain plug out, get this dirty oil out of it. It's very, very black and looks a bit clumpy at this point. Now to get the sump off, there's quite a bit on this engine to take off first, one of which is like, it's not a direct engine mount, it is an engine mount, but it stops the engine swaying. So this joins onto the chassis of the car and the sump, so that needs to come off. Starter motor fully off now at this point. Then underneath the engine we've got the oil level sensor, and there's a boost pipe to get out of the way. Once all that's out of the way, we can undo all the small bolts holding the sump on, and then try and prise this off. Now this is actually glued on with a silicone, so it's not an easy thing to get off. You need to kind of get a little bit of purchase under there and break the seal, and then it comes out to reveal all these horrors. Right, we've got the sump off, and it's not looking good, to be honest. I don't know what's happened to the oil in this engine. We'll have a quick look at the service history on it, because I don't think it's been serviced for the last few years. I really don't. It's got like sludge in it and all. I've never seen anything like it, I'll be honest. There's no wonder the bearings failed, and I know which bearing it is now. It's furthest away from the oil pump, which is kind of what you'd expect to see if it's getting oil starvation. But let me show you this, it's absolutely terrible. So I think first what I'll do is explain to you what the part is that's broken here. In every engine there's a piston. The piston's attached to the crankshaft along the bottom with a connecting rod. Now at the bottom of the connecting rod there's a bearing that spins round. It spins on the crankshaft and it has to have oil pressure, and the tolerances on these bearings are within thousandths of an inches. If anything's wrong with this system, the whole thing it doesn't work. Your bearing spins and starts banging in the engine, and potentially if it damages the crankshaft too much or bends a rod, that's it for your engine basically. So this is what we're about to find out to see how badly damaged it is. So now we've got the bottom of the sump off. Basically this is the bottom of the connecting rod. These are the two bolts that hold the bearing in that rides on the crankshaft, and you absolutely shouldn't be able to grab it and move it like that. This is what the banging is when the engine's running. Luckily only one of these is like this, so that's a bit of a positive I suppose. Now this is what the bearing looks like once the bearing cap's taken off of the bottom of the connecting rod, and it really shouldn't look like that. I'll show you in a minute what a brand new set of bearings looks like compared to these ones, and these ones they're absolutely toast. So we'll get them out and see what state the crankshaft's in. Now this is the bottom of the bearing cap, which actually looks fine. There's not really any damage to that at all. This on the other hand is the bearing. It's completely splattered the bearing. It's obviously got way too hot because of oil starvation, and it's just let go. And when this happens it's called spun a bearing. Basically the bearing flattens and it rotates on the crankshaft and can cause damage. Now the crankshaft here doesn't look too bad actually. To touch it feels smooth. I'm going to do a little bit of work just to refine it slightly, but actually I think it's looking okay, but we're going to do a few tests just to check that out anyway. And this just speaks for itself. Look at the state of this. The amount of sludge and black oil in this engine is absolutely unbelievable. It took ages to clean a lot of it out, it really did. So next up, I'm going to get the oil pump out and give that a thorough clean. Make sure there's no sludge in there. Clean out the oil pickup pipe. Remove the baffle tray at the bottom of the engine so that I can get access to all the rest of the bearings, because if that one bearing were that bad, I'm not going to leave any of them in. I'm going to replace all of them. So all this has to come off to gain access, and obviously, like I say, this is the oil pump and it needs a thorough clean and checking that there's no debris in it or anything like that. We're going to change direction for a minute. Basically, now I've pulled all this engine apart, there's a few bits I need to order, and I've got the bearings, but the one mistake I made, I thought getting hold of the conrod bolts would be a nightmare or expensive from BMW. So what I actually did was order from a company in Germany what I thought was a set of conrod bolts. Turns out I bought one bolt for 30 quid, waited nearly a week, and it turned up and it was just one bolt. So I bit the bullet, rung BMW, and they actually got 10 bolts for cheaper than one bolt from Germany from this specialist company. So sometimes just go to the main dealer, it saves you a lot of hard work, it really does. It's lesson learned anyway. So basically, while we're waiting for these bolts, I'm going to get the front brakes done at least, because we already know the computer says that the pads need doing. I'm looking through the wheels, they're absolutely done. The discs and pads, surprisingly cheap for a set of discs and pads for this car, so it's just getting them anyway. I'll do the back ones later, but for now we're just going to get the front ones done, and obviously I'm going to paint the calipers, because why wouldn't I when they're all apart like this. So I've actually got pitting on all of the rod bearings, not just the one that's knackered. The one that's knackered, it's very obviously knackered. You can see that plain as day. But the other three have got they don't look bad, but they don't look great either. So I am going to replace all of them. I'm going to use a plastic gauge just to check the clearances and things like that. The crank looks alright to me, but again, the plastic gauge will tell us. I've given it a little bit of a clean up just with some 1000 grades wet and dry in a very careful, like triple motion, basically with a small piece of wet and dry paper and just pulling it across the crank slightly just to get any high spots off or anything like that, if there is any. To touch, it feels fine, but that's not to say that it is fine. So we'll put the new bearings in, torque them up with the old bolts, plastic gauge them just to check the clearances, and pull it back apart, have a look at it, and if it looks alright, if it looks in tolerance, then I'm just going to put it back together and see if it's gonna hold, if it's gonna work. Obviously I'm not going to sell this car straight away. I'm going to do quite a few thousand miles in it just to make sure that it is performing properly, but it's just one of them. We're just going to have to wait and see, so let's get to it. Right, these are all the bearings laid out. So obviously that's the failed bearing, that's the one that's not even the right shape anymore. This is one of the other bearings that came out. You can see the pitting in it. Obviously it's nowhere near as bad as the failed bearing, but it's still not in great condition, to be honest. These are the brand new bearings, and as you can see, there's a massive difference between the ones on the left, the ones on the right, and the brand new ones in the middle. They're a world apart. Now this is what you call plastic gauge. Basically it's a tiny little piece of plastic that measures the engine clearances, and what you do is you put it in the bearing, torque the con rod back up, and it squashes a bit of plastic, and then you measure how much the plastic splattered, and the magic number is 0.0025. This measurement shows us that we're only actually 0.0005 off in each direction from the brand new bearing being put on the good bit of crank and the bad bit of crank. So we're actually just either side of the tolerance levels, but actually still within tolerance. So this might actually work out okay. So obviously the next thing to do is button it all back up and see if it works. Now fitting these bearings is quite an ordeal, to be quite honest. Basically what you do is you need oil on the bolts so the torque, so it slips and you get the correct torque. You fit them up, tighten them slightly, then you tighten them to 20 newton meters of torque each. Then you go 70 degrees on each bolt, then you go 70 degrees again on each bolt. Then you undo them fully, and then you do the whole process again, and you have to do this for every single con rod. So you can imagine it takes quite a while to get this right, and I don't know how important it is, but apparently it's one of them. If you don't do it, then you're just playing with fire. So it's how it's going to go. Obviously you can see here I slipped, so back apart, and we'll start again with that torque setting. We'll get there in the end with them all. Next goes back on the baffle tray, and followed by the oil pump. Everything obviously has been fully cleaned at this point. Oil pump back in. Again, everything in this engine, every bolt gets torqued to spec. Each different size bolt has a different torque setting, so it's you have to take your time, you have to know the settings and all that. Once all that's on, the sump goes back on, starter motor, boost pipe, any electrical connections, things like that. Then it's time for some new oil. Now we have a running engine again. Now the process doesn't stop there, because basically what I need to do now is let it get up to temperature, then fill the engine with an engine oil flush, then let it idle for 20 minutes whilst it's up to temperature, then drain the oil, then replace the oil with some nice new oil again, and that should help break down any remaining sludge in the engine. So this is exactly what I did, and then went to try to take it out to see how it performed. Well, we got it running, and it sounds really nice and healthy, but there's a lot of smoke. It's not gone exactly how I thought it would go. It's like I say, it's running nice and it sounds quite well, but it's smoking quite badly. So it could be the turbo, it could be the turbo oil feed, or oil return should I say. If that's blocked, then it'll be forcing oil through the turbo seals. So that's going to be our next challenge, the next video. So please keep watching, and if you like this video, subscribe, and I'll see you next time when we do a bit more work to this X1 and see if we can figure out why it's smoking. Cheers guys.